Hi guys, just trying to get Ilza on here. Okay, there we are. Ilza, are you there? Thank you, sweetheart. Ilza and I are battling to connect, it seems. Ilza, it says you're unable to join. If you can perhaps get off and then I'll invite you again. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in. We'll be with you in a second. See, this is why we do little testers for these things. We actually did. Oh, there we are. Ilza, there you are.
Hello, Lee.
Can
Lovely
you
to
hear
see
me?
you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. A friend of mine just sent me a WhatsApp to say that you can't hear me on Insta. So if
Yeah,
you can hear me, please send a little virtual wave.
yes, I'm good. I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So I mean, we've got quite a lot of people who are already, on board and who've jumped on. So I'm going to go straight ahead and get into it so that we don't waste anybody's time. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in. It's fantastic to have you here. Yeah, the first of what we hope is going to be many, many more dialogues and discussions of this nature between myself, Ilza, and you. So, Ilza, for those who may not know, is a counseling psychologist based in Port Elizabeth, Etebeja, and she is also a conscious parenting coach. So guess what our next topic is going to be?
That will be a good one, Lee. That will be a
Yeah,
good
oh
one.
yeah, for sure. So Ilse and I decided to do these live talks because we both have a shared passion for self-mastery, for the inner landscape, for self-healing, self-repair, that kind of thing. And also, the understanding that all of that stuff is really important in terms of how we show up in the world for ourselves and
Yes.
as parents and as spouses and as friends and as colleagues, and just basically, sets the tone for how we operate and, as I say, how we show up in the world. So we both believe that everything starts within, and that the inner world essentially reflects the outer world, and to a certain degree, kind of influences that as well, and our relationships, the relationship that we have with ourselves. So
Yes.
that is what we thought was perhaps a good starting point. And we felt that with February being the month of love, there was no time better than this for us to broach the topic of self-love, because that's essentially where it all starts. And now we kind of understand what Michael Jackson was talking about when he says, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. When we heard him back in
Yes.
the 80s, and a lot of us were way young, we didn't know what the man was on about. But now we understand that self-repair means social repair. And, if we look at ourselves, we're going to essentially then, create a better society, be better citizens, and just humans in general. So it's very important work, that needs to be done for generations to come, going forward. And, Ilza, before we get into self-love as a practice, I feel like we need to tap into a prelude of sorts, and
Yes.
that is self-knowledge. And it brings me to my first question, because I was just thinking, surely in order to accept or love oneself, you need to understand yourself first. And as crazy as it may seem, we often don't know ourselves at all. And that was
That's good.
my initial question. My question is, why is it that we do not know ourselves perhaps as well as we know somebody else through and through? I mean, I can tell you, I know my husband through and through. I know my daughter through and through. But why is it that it's so difficult for us to understand ourselves? Are we scared to go there? Do we not know where to begin? Why is it difficult?
Lee, and thank you so much for your lovely introduction. And I just want to actually, before I go to that question, I just wanted to reflect on, the statement of when we are able to heal ourselves, then we are truly able to heal the world. And if we are able to unconditionally love ourselves, it will bring unconditional love to every single being. And we can then kind of see that there is a lack of that self-love in the world, because we do not see unconditional love in this world for all beings, and so I really love the way that you kind of started. And I mean, even referencing Michael Jackson, if we see just how he kind of succumbed at the end of the day, what a lack of self-love there was.
Yeah.
So just going back to kind of, and it's the Socrates, know thyself is probably the greatest kind of journey that we can ever undertake in life, and I do think why we really kind of have no awareness of it is because we're not brought up in a culture that teaches us that we have to go inside of us. Our culture is very much about the external. It's very much about the outside, the outside appearance, the outside achievement, the outside success. It is really about the outward journey. And I think we all come to a certain point in our life where we are maybe experiencing a lot of pain, and a lot of suffering. I mean, there's really, truly no person that ever phones me and says, Ilse, I'm so incredibly happy with my life. I want to come and start therapy. So pain really is that portal.
It keeps you in business, Ilse.
It really does, this business of pain. But I mean, really, it is pain then is actually that portal for us for growth and transformation, because pain leads us to going within. And I mean, we aren't taught anything about this, Lee. I mean, we are not exposed to this in any institution in which we are raised. We're not exposed at all.
That's a fascinating point. It was actually one of my questions to say, does one have to experience pain and to kind of hit the proverbial rock bottom, or experience adversity in order, because you tend to find that that's what happens, to yourself.
That's what happens.
That's what happens. Or you hear other people, they go, I hit rock bottom. I couldn't be any lower. And, this is when that light bulb moment happened.
It usually is something, I think 99% of us, we're just living in the day-to-day of the world. I mean, we pay the bills, we go to work, we've got the kids, we've got the marriage, so we kind of also get to this place where I've ticked all the boxes. Yeah. And kind of I was conditioned to believe if I get all of these things, then I should be happy, and so, okay, well, I've ticked the boxes, I've got all of these things, but there's no kind of happiness here, so what's going on? How come I'm still not feeling fulfilled in my life? Because I did everything. I followed the rules. I did everything that was expected of me, and so definitely we are just not kind of growing up in a society and in a culture. I think there's major shifts, again today, but that we are actually kind of told about the inward journey and what do we do to go inside of ourselves.
But I really want to delve into the understanding. I mean, we're going to get to the self-love, but what was interesting for me about the understanding is going really deep into it, where it's not a case of thinking, okay, fine. I mean, I understand myself. I know that I have a short temper. for instance, a lot of people think that that's where it ends, okay? Knowing your patterns or, your habits or whatever. But I heard something that was very interesting the other day, and it was quite profound. There's an Instagram page that I follow called Toolbox. And these girls were saying, they were sharing a sentiment that they had heard that says you need to, and this is also one of your beliefs, that you need to, and your buzzwords, you need to become curious about yourself. And these girls were saying, rather than going, what is wrong with Ilse, to rather go, what has happened to Ilse? And in the same way, you apply that to yourself. Instead of going, what's wrong with me? To rather go, what has happened to me? So to understand, yes, I've got a short temper. And not to blame Ilse for the short temper. No, it's because I'm surrounded by irritating people. No, it's to really go deeper than that and to go, what is it? What is the root cause? What happened? All the way back then. And it doesn't even need to be something extreme like violent abuse or whatever.
Not
it
at
could have
all.
been a remark that was passed, at school about, I don't know, about your weight or about your IQ or about your family, So that is essentially the prelude that I wanted to touch on before we even get to self-love. Because before you love yourself, my understanding is that you would need to understand yourself so that you can love yourself unconditionally.
And so Lee, really, when we're then even saying understand ourselves, we can have insight. We can have insight into maybe what happened in our past and how we got to be the person who then has the short temper, or, why we struggled in certain. So we can have insight, but insight really isn't enough, and really, I think it starts with an acceptance that we are completely unconscious. The matrix is true. We are all in a conditioned reality. We are all in our own little matrix, and we are completely fast asleep. And so it really is about becoming conscious, and conscious is, it really is like an unlayering. It really is an evolution,
feeling back,
it is such an evolution, and it takes real dedication. It takes an openness, a willingness to really go on a healing journey.
So where then would someone start now in terms of loving themselves? Because we all know, there are concepts around self-care. We live in the age of Instagram, and everything centers around having candlelit baths and, that kind of thing. But where do we begin? Where do we start in terms of self-love? We already established in the beginning that it is important because it's going to influence how you show up in the world, everything, how your relationships are, everything. So what do we do? How do we start properly?
Because I think absolutely the root of growth is self-love, and I can only truly love another human being to the capacity that I love myself. But again, we are completely unconscious, to all the stories that we tell ourselves every single day. And again, those stories come from our conditioned reality. We aren't our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. But the whole day we're telling ourselves stories and we think that is who we are. But that is actually not who we are at all.
It's thoughts that have been planted there throughout your life.
Listen, all of our belief systems are pretty much conditioned by the time we're 5. Okay. And a child only has kind of logical brain kind of starts here from the age of 4, so the belief systems from which we are still operating today, they come from the 4-year-old inside of us, so, and from there we learn to adapt, And so by the time we're 25, our brain is now we programmed, we just then patterns completely on repeat. And we're not even aware of these patterns. We don't even know. We don't even know we're just patterns on repeat. And so again, like how do we start even the inward journey? Because I love it. Let's go have the bath with the candles. I lit some candles for our Valentine's little chat tonight too. But again, that's going external. So I'm not like, we do all of those things. It's beautiful. Treat yourself, have the bath, go for the massages. All of those things are ways that you can take care of yourself. But Lee, if we even just had to become aware of the way that we speak to ourselves every single day.
Oh.
How do we speak to ourselves?
And often you don't even hear it. You're not even listening to
we don't. We don't hear it.
It's just on autopilot.
So, it is something around like 70,000 thoughts a day, and we are maybe 5% conscious of the stories we're telling ourselves. And again, most of us, and I think, majority of us, we treat ourselves really, really poorly. We're incredibly harsh. We're so self-critical. We are incredibly judgmental. There is a level of self-loathing and self-hatred, self-blame. That is the complete. And so what would be the antidote to that? Would be self-love. And so,
I just want to go back to what you were saying quickly before we move too far away from it, because and I've got my wet wipes here in case I start tearing up, because, these conversations are like gut-wrenching because they really land, within me. They resonate. And, it's really a scary thought for me that most of our, what did you call it, that was formed by the age of 5?
Our conditioning, our belief systems,
yes. Our conditioning. And I want to kind of repeat it for everybody. I want to say it louder for the back so that everybody understands what you're saying. By the age of 5, I'm 43 now, but most of my conditioning was already established by the age of 5. But here is the scary thing. That conditioning was not established by myself.
Not at all.
It was established by everybody else, by my caregivers, by my parents, by my peers. It was established by everybody else because at the age of 5, I had very little control as to conditioning myself.
No control.
And so, this is the clincher, guys. This is the clincher. And please feel free to comment or to ask any questions. And I'll throw them out at Ilse as we go along. This is the clincher for me. That conditioning is done by people who themselves need healing.
Exactly.
And so you take all of that in, you internalize all of that ish, and it's from people who themselves, because we're all traumatized, everybody, generationally. Your parents have their own wounds, and then they pass those on to you. They project those onto you. You then claim them as your own. And at 43, you're still holding on to that flippant story.
We are. Lee, and it is these, and this is why it is so incredibly profound to really take accountability for your healing journey, because that which you are able to heal in yourself, again, this is going to bring healing to your family, to everybody around you. This isn't about fixing anyone. This isn't about focusing on because we cannot actually fix anybody.
Yeah.
But it is kind of an energetic way of being in the world. It's a very different way that you do arrive in the world. And again, if I could even just put it as a challenge, for people to just even kind of put themselves on a judgment detox. Put yourself on a judgment detox, and throughout the day, you just kind of notice the little ways that you're saying, oh, I should have, oh, I shouldn't have, oh, look at what I did there, did it. Just even noticing that. And that's where we shift then
and
to curiosity.
It's not even verbal. Sometimes it's not even verbal.
It's internal. The internal chatter. Yeah. The internal chatter the whole day. And that is a very profound shift that we then do is when we do go from judgment to curiosity, where you do start treating yourself as the most interesting human being there is to get to know. Like, oh, how come I'm kind of talking to myself in this way right now? What's going on for me that I'm being kind of so judgmental and harsh and using this kind of tone with myself? You know, and if we can shift to that, now we really need to shift to compassion. So here we go, judgment, curiosity, compassion. That's a huge, huge shift to do. You know, we don't actually have that compassionate voice conditioned. Where that compassionate voice isn't programmed, you know. So we've just got to also understand just in kind of in terms of our brain, you know, our brain is here for our survival. Our brain didn't evolve for us to have joy and bliss and calm and peace and happiness. I mean, you know, our brain evolved for our survival. So the brain wants to keep repeating that which is familiar, because familiar kept us safe. And I mean, we see that with 2-year-olds. You know, a 2-year-old wants to eat the same food every day. They want to hear that same bedtime story for weeks on end. We're reading the same story. We want to wear the same clothes because it's familiar. You know, when we're living, it's safe, familiar, safe. I mean, when we're living in our tribes hundreds of years ago, you stayed with the same people. You did not leave the tribe because something could kill you. So it's the same people every single day. You're eating the same food. You don't going to try that berry over there because it could kill you. So our brain is going to keep us in the familiar pattern, you know, but now we really want to make that which is unfamiliar. Compassion, self-love, acceptance, you know, accountability. You know, now we want to make that familiar, and we can do it.
So the first practical step that I'm picking up, because I mean, you know me, pragmatic all the way. The first practical step is that judgment challenge. That's what I'm taking from you, is that when I notice myself judging myself, to stop myself in my tracks, you know,
catch you there.
To just be aware of it and to hear.
And let's see even if we start judging ourselves for not doing the judgment challenge correctly.
Gosh.
Oh, God. There we go. We've just done it.
Yeah, there's no way to even do it properly. But the first
but it's an awareness. It's awareness. It's awareness. It's like we just become aware of it. You know, we start noticing it. Lee, but you know, just going back to conditioning. I mean, again, we don't come into the world as a baby and there's this kind of screen and we say, oh, these are the belief systems about women that kind of resonate with me. I'll pick those. These are the belief systems about love and success and marriage and relationships and achievement or men or parenting or children or, I mean, none of that. We chose. We just inherited it. Yeah. You know, we were just, I mean, again, we just absorbed all of that stuff. And so part of a healing journey is really a deconstruction of those belief systems.
Rewiring yourself.
Well, I mean, again, it's like, I mean, we want to rewire the brain because a lot of these things aren't serving us. These belief systems are actually causing us a lot of pain and suffering.
Okay, but here's a question for you then. How does one differentiate between thoughts, you know, that you've inherited, that you've been conditioned to have, and your genuine instinct or natural kind of feeling?
Truth.
Yeah, your truth.
Your truth.
How do you differentiate? How do you know that, no, I probably feel that way because that's how I've been conditioned, or no, this is who I am. This is congruent with who I am.
And that's where I will say also, Lee, that it takes a real discernment of that because it can be because I mean, again, so much of these belief systems we're not even aware of. You know, I mean, what are the belief systems? I mean, that can be a whole other conversation, but even just belief systems around money, you know, that could really be keeping us incredibly stuck in our lives. But we're not aware of the little money story that we kind of picked up when we were 8 years old. And that became this story that we're still living today. So it takes real discernment and kind of a presence with yourself and a real sitting with yourself. There are, and I mean, again, we can even just talk about the gender. I mean, how much of our belief systems about what it means to be a man in this world and what it means to be a woman in this world do resonate with us.
Yeah.
And there may be a lot of that stuff that's just kind of slowly but surely we learn to let go of, because there is a difference between kind of the mind's conditioning and what really resonates with our truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can take kind of controversial topics even, like we may have really, and I mean, this can be an example, like we may have been conditioned with the belief that, homosexuality is wrong because we grew up in religious families, but there's still just that something in us that knows that no love can be wrong. And so that can create this kind of inner conflict, because my heart, everything in my heart is telling me, but of course two human beings can love each other, and how can any love ever be wrong? But the conditioned programming is there and those voices are there. And so this is then where we kind of deconstruct and say, you know what, I'm letting that go. That is actually just causing too much pain. And so often when we are kind of following our heart, we are going very much against mainstream culture.
Yeah. I think,
we're following a very different route there, which can be so uncomfortable for us because we want acceptance and belonging. We want to be part of the tribe. We still want to be part of the tribe, even though a lot of the stuff that tribe is saying and doing is like actually completely kind of going against what our soul says,
Yeah. I think, I mean, for those who have just joined, I see a couple of people have just joined. We are essentially, I mean, we've kind of fused the topics of understanding oneself, getting to know oneself, understanding oneself, and that being like almost like a prelude to learning to love oneself. And we're talking about the conditioning that takes place from baby years. Ilse made a powerful statement. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, no, you correctly. Just from early years, we have been conditioned.
Yes. So from 5 o'clock, from 5 years old, where those, those formative years, at about 5, you essentially have, you've been conditioned.
All of these belief systems. That's it.
Your entire belief system has been conditioned at the age of 5. And for me, what stood out with that statement was that the people who are conditioning you are perhaps people themselves who haven't, done the work for their own healing. And so all of their issues are being projected onto you. And you said it beautifully, is that essentially all you're doing is inheriting and passing along, passing along. And so then
generational patterns.
This is what we call generational patterns. And, we have these conversations because you wanted to stop somewhere. And we were talking about how self-love literally influences everything. And for those who may be in relationships, romantic relationships, you would know. For those who are parents, it's the same thing. I mean, when I think, for instance, about how to speak to my child, I'm so aware of it now because I want to be so careful about what I am projecting onto her and what kind of belief system I am instilling in her. And in relationships, that curiosity comes into play, because in a relationship now, you're triggered by something, for instance. And at the time, you might not even know why a certain thing rubs you up, a certain way, or gets you so pissed off. You can't understand why. You take for granted. It's that autopilot you mentioned, Ilse. You take for granted I've got a short temper or whatever, but it may be
just me. That's just who I am. That's just me.
Exactly. And it may be, or even the financial issues, your belief system around financial issues because of things you witnessed at home. It may have been, even unwittingly kind of projected onto you by parents. They may not have said anything to you about finances, but you watching right, as a kid, and you
We
see
just
all of this.
heard some conversations, and now we're making sense of it
Yes.
from the capacity of a 6-year-old.
Yeah. And now you
You know, if our
hide all
parents,
of that stuff in your relationship, and you don't,
it's still there.
but
It's
you
still
need to
there.
become curious about it. And as we said in the beginning, it's not what is wrong with Lee, it's what happened to Lee. And you can
That's
extend
it.
that to somebody else as well. Not what's wrong with Ilse, but what happened to Ilse.
What happened? Where does
Yeah.
this come from? You know, what's going on inside of me now? How come I want to scream at my husband when the milk isn't put back in the fridge?
Yeah.
So let's go chat to the milk. Milk, you know, I want to kind of lose my shit when you stand here. Like, what is going on inside of me that this is really, because it's not about that. It's really not about the milk not being in the fridge. You know, there's always something going on behind that.
I'll share an interesting story a friend shared with me. She is a therapist, and she had a patient who had sweaty palms. Okay. And this lady had no idea why her palms were so sweaty. She couldn't understand. And it had been since she was a kid, and she tried to get help from different doctors and this and that and the other. And nothing was happening, and she couldn't understand. But she ended up doing this heart therapy. And when she did the heart therapy, what came out of that therapy was that she grew up in a home where her parents showed no affection whatsoever to the kids. She was a middle child, and so, you know, she was, if there was going to be any affection, she was going to be the last to receive it. Okay, so it would have either been worn out with the first kid or given to the baby, but with little kid syndrome. So there was no affection given in the family, but she remembered during this therapy that the one day her dad came home. He was working I don't know where he was working, but he had wet hands. He had been working with water, and he walked into the house with these wet hands, and the mom came running to her husband with a cloth, wiping him, touching him, rubbing his hands. And what it did to her in her psyche was it said, boom,
this is how I get affection.
Wet hands mean affection. It's crazy. And then her body responded, and she had sweaty palms all the way into adulthood.
That's it. That's it. And I mean, again, how are we going to be conscious of that? You know, we're not aware of any of this. You know, so Lee, also just, you know, maybe a question that I would like anybody who's listening, but, you know, if we truly, you know, had to like really fall in love with ourselves, you know, fall in love with ourselves. Like, what is that going to look like? We don't even know what this necessarily looks like. But I would be curious to hear, like, if you had to go on your most ideal Valentine's date, and what would you want that person to say to you? What is it that we want to hear? And so maybe if anybody wanted to comment, or even you, Lee, tell me, like, what do we want to hear? What are the words?
I'm trying to think. I mean, as you say that, I'm trying to not do the usual, you're beautiful, you're smart.
That's great. You're beautiful, you're smart. Okay, those are great. We put that in. They count. Let's not judge them. Let's not judge them. They're beautiful. You're smart. I love your heart. I love your being. I love your essence. It would have
to be like, you know, 3 words, just as you are.
I love spending time with you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You know, so I love you just as you are. That would be a really beautiful one to hear.
How about you, Ilse?
You know, I think a profound need that we have, and we can even just see this kind of play out in our life, is approval. A profound need for approval. And approval really states that I love you and accept you unconditionally just for your being. Just for your being, just for the mere fact that you exist. just for the fact that you are here, not the way you look or your status or your, again, not for your successes or your achievements, or because you clean the house, or because you cook nice food, or because, you're always driving the kids around, or like, just for existing. Just love just for you.
Do you know what I do as an exercise for myself in trying to, you always find your own rhythm or your own way of doing things. And for me, I mean, the one of the people that I love the most in the world, my favorite person in the entire world, is my daughter. And she's now a teenager, and obviously that comes with a whole lot of kind of issues and so on. And I always find it so easy to reassure her and to validate her. And if she says whatever, without a doubt, I don't miss a beat. I find it so easy to say to her, "Oh, you are fantastic." And I mean it, like with everything in me. And I look at her, I'm like, "You are worthy. You deserve everything that's great." So my practical practice or exercise is to try and talk to myself the way I talk to her.
That's it. And it's beautifully, and this is how we truly then learn to kind of fall in love with ourselves. And so, and how comfortable do we feel looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, like, "You're so gorgeous. You're so smart. I love spending time with you." Like, again, falling in love with ourselves requires no Botox. There's no waxing required. There's no makeup required. It's just that arrival with you.
I'm going to throw you a curveball quickly. We've got a few minutes left. If anybody does have any questions, please do send them through. We've got a few minutes left. And if we don't get through everything...
Did our time go so quickly, Lee? Oh, my God. It really has gone so quickly.
We're going to say goodbye in about 10 minutes. But here's the curveball question, Ilse, is that if we are meant to love ourselves as we are,
yes,
unconditionally, and accept ourselves as we are, why are we even looking to unravel and reset and rewire and repair? Why then do that? Why don't we just accept ourselves as we are?
Because we just don't, Lee. This is the difficulty. I would say these practices that we employ are really beautiful. So, again, for everybody who is listening, I would say you become aware of the judgmental voices and you put yourself on that judgment detox, but really look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself all of the things that you would want to hear from an ideal partner. When we learn to love ourselves, just think how people feel when they meet a new person. When you kind of, when we kind of in the throes of a new relationship, we feel so lovable.
Yeah.
Because somebody else is loving us and somebody else now desires us. But then when that person leaves, it kind of goes with them too. Now we're unlovable and undesirable because we give power over to the other.
Yeah.
But again, if I can accept myself as lovable, and if I can truly, love myself, when the other person leaves, that doesn't leave with them.
I would even go as far as saying that, going and doing the inner work and being curious about the patterns and the belief systems that we've conditioned or been conditioned to have. Even that is practicing self-love, because you are giving yourself an opportunity to,
I love that, yes,
to just, to really step into your most powerful, beautiful self. Because it's almost as if you don't do that inner work and you don't become curious and you don't look at your patterns and try to understand where do they come from and try and rewire or deconstruct, it's almost as if you are half loving yourself. You're not giving yourself that full, fair chance, to
you see, and
full spectrum.
because the tough part is, like, so, I mean, again, I'm going to say we really challenge ourselves with this, and the way you speak to yourself and you start practicing it, because it's unfamiliar. What is familiar is self-loathing, criticism, judgment, self-blame. Like, we kind of think we're horrible human beings.
Yeah.
Very easy that we go to the places like, I'm a real piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm so horrible. I'm so bad. There must be something wrong with me. Lee, that is the ultimate actually disease. Yeah. That is the true psychological disease. I'm not good enough. How often in the day do we go to that place? I'm not good enough. And so it can be really tricky because, I mean, I want to say, like, our brain is listening to everything that we say to it throughout the day. So if we are going to tell ourselves something, because your brain doesn't care positive or negative, good or bad, wrong or right, but your brain is really listening to you. It's listening to you. So let's tell our brain some good things, and this will become, over time, it becomes a familiar pattern. And I mean, again, over time, it can take a number of years, because sometimes it doesn't take much, and we go back into those very low places of shame.
Yeah.
And I'm so bad, and I mean, again, we can just think about, what does it take, how we speak to our bodies and speak about our bodies, or if the bank account just drops a little bit, how do we start speaking about ourselves? Or if things on the outside aren't working out according to our fantasy and our idea, how do we speak to ourselves?
I think,
very quickly,
I think it essentially also grounds you, because you're talking about, lovers leaving with your self-love, or all sorts of things happening externally.
That's because you don't even have it. That's why when they go,
issues and so on. But if you have it within yourself, essentially it grounds.
It can't be taken away. It can't be taken away. Cannot be taken away.
Firm.
And so again, some of the ways where we do become more self-aware and we become more conscious is we go to therapy, we go see a life coach, we meditate. Meditation is absolutely transformational. You journal, you do breath work, you take courses, you read the books. This is a lot of investment in yourself. This is a lot of time that you then investing in yourself. I mean, I know for me in my day to day, if I don't do those practices, it's like maybe 1-2 days, I'm back in the familiar.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much, and then I can feel that shift in my energy, so again, it's that real, and I mean, I'm not saying like we've got to invest, hours into but even just little ways that we arrive daily to go within, it is absolutely enough, and we can really go and even discuss a lot more around self-awareness and I'm not good enough. Marissa Peer is really phenomenal psychologist, and she called it the mirror technique, and she would write on her client's mirror, I am enough. I am enough. So every time you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing that I am enough. I am enough.
Yeah.
I am enough. I am enough. I mean, like I didn't want to write it on lipstick on my mirror, but as I wake up every morning, first thing as I wake up, poof, in front of my cupboard, there's my colorful poster. I am enough. I am enough, And when we do come from that inner landscape of I am enough, what are we going to manifest in our lives? Even just that kind of practice, we've arrived here tonight, Lee, to have this conversation. But the I am not good enough story, I could have sabotaged this very easily.
Yeah.
Very, very easily. Because, I mean, now we're putting ourselves out there. We're having, you are exposing yourself to the possibilities of judgment and criticism and, because, I mean, that is the level of consciousness of our world. Yeah. But again, coming from I am enough in this moment, here we arrive and we're having a really thoughtful, meaningful conversation. But, what does it take? And we get triggered and there we go. That I'm not good enough one, it's very sneaky how it kind of just, and I'm like, oh gosh, there I'm again. I thought I've done so much work on this one. Geez, like there it is again.
And then you abandon yourself and you stop living because fear sets in and you think, oh gosh, no.
There we go.
I can't
There we go.
Who the hell do I think I am? Listen, Ilse,
to be doing this. Yeah,
At 7:45, we're going to wrap it up. We'd said 45 minutes. I know
that's
everybody,
it.
it's a weeknight, a school night. But I just wanted to say, as we wrap up, you spoke about investing in yourself. And I want to say to everybody who has joined, thank you for doing so. This was essentially an investment in yourself, tuning into this live. And
This is an act of self-love.
absolutely,
That's it.
absolutely. It was an
It
act of
is.
self-love, and it's literally us planting the seeds and getting that ball rolling, particularly for people who are delving into these waters for the first time. And I can assure you, in the beginning, it might seem quite vast, but the dots really do start to connect. So I'm going to encourage you to join the next one. We will be keeping you posted. It feels, Ilse, like we may need to do a part 2 because, I feel like we've just scraped the surface. It's such a big topic.
And it is kind of also very interlinked, because I mean, again, we're looking at self-awareness, and that kind of flows into then again, self-love. So the challenge for everyone, I think, let's do the I am enough, and write it on the mirror, or have it somewhere. Put the reminder on your phone in the morning, put the reminder on your phone in the evening, and really, I am enough. And I do think it is absolutely transformational.
And when we have it also to listen to how you're speaking to yourself, and once that judgmental voice,
listen the voice. And the critical voices, listen, but catch it, because as soon as we judge ourselves, we're going to, I'm not good enough, immediately.
Yeah. Please
Judgment
do DM
takes us there.
Ilse's handle is at Bigs Ilse. Mine is at Lee Duru. Give us a follow, and also do DM for any other topics that you'd like Ilse to kind of unpack for us. And as we say, I mean, we may, I think we're really going to have to kind of do a part 2 of the self-love conversation, because it really is quite a vast topic, and there's really a lot. We'd love to hear also how you're doing in terms of the practical advice, the I am enough, and also in terms of not judging yourself. So do keep communicating, DM us and give us a follow. And thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in. For those who may have missed
Thank you, Lee.
it is recorded, so you will find it saved under the highlights, so you'll find it there. But thanks so much. Have a good evening, Ilse. It was fantastic chatting to you.
So lovely to see you, Lee. Thank you for being such an incredible host. Always love your energy. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.